and share your screen at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
I like to start on time, so.
Alrighty. We're going to start out with some PowerPoint slides just to kind of get started here. And then I've got this set up where I hope you can see what I'm doing here. I might have to adjust my screen a little bit. So hang on a minute, because yeah, that's the next one. Okay. So before you get started, if you are going to want to do a couple of things, one of them is to read the FDA's Good Manufacturing Practices for Cosmetics. This is something good to do no matter what, but it's especially necessary if you're going to sell things. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to see if I can get rid of this screen because it covers up half my slides here. There we go. It's probably the easiest thing to do is to just go to fda.gov/cosmetics and then type in good manufacturing practices and it will come up. They actually have made this checklist that's a little easier to navigate than the actual laws with all the legalese in it. This is kind of a checklist of what you're supposed to do for, your workspace, your containers, your ingredients, and so forth. But it's all about, the cleanliness and making sure that what you produce doesn't have germs and isn't adulterated in some way. And also in that document, I believe they'll tell you about labeling, and that is another issue that's important for what you put on your labels. So certain things are required and certain things are not allowed. For instance, you're not allowed to say anything on your label about healing or making a promise that it will do something, because then you're sort of making medical claims. Another thing that you're supposed to do first is sanitize your space and your utensils. You're actually supposed to soak your utensils in a solution of this sanitizing solution in water, and you only use like a tablespoon and a half for 4 gallons of water, but you fill your sink with it, soak your utensils, pots or pans or cups or spoons or whatever you're using, and also spray down your work surface with it, and that makes sure that you're working with clean things. The other thing that you'll need is some disposable gloves. You're supposed to wear gloves when you work with this, and change them frequently. One set is not going to do it, because if you're working with ingredients and then you turn around and touch the microwave, then you're supposed to change your gloves. Right now, if you watch people out in the public, like especially at restaurants, they're all wearing their masks and gloves, but if you notice, they're never changing their gloves, so they might as well not really be wearing them, because the whole idea is that if you're touching something that hasn't been sanitized, you're supposed to take them off and put new ones on. The other thing I'd strongly recommend is that you wear an apron. I can't tell you how many sets of clothing I have ruined with beeswax and oils, so you definitely want to do that. A couple of recommendations to you about working with beeswax. A lot of us started out with using crock pots. And the problem with crock pots is there's not a lot of control about the heat, and even on low, once it gets heated up, and even with the lid off, the crock pot will actually get too hot for beeswax and it will start to smoke. I have found that a Fry Daddy is much more easy to use, because if you buy the one that has the thermostat, like is in the picture, you don't need that strainer, but the one doesn't have to have the thermostat, you can control the heat. And that way you can turn it just below 200 and get the beeswax to melt and control the overheating of it. You don't want to heat beeswax more than about 180 degrees, because once it gets hotter than that, it will start to smoke and it will change color and texture. And the other thing that I have found is, and I always do this, and I'll show you when we demonstrate tonight, I use cotton knit material for the final straining of beeswax. Even though you might start with beeswax that looks pretty clean, like in the picture there always are going to be little teeny, pieces left. And it seems like cotton knit is really tightly woven, and it's probably the best strainer that we have around the house. So old t-shirts, things like that. Now, some people might question whether or not to use a double boiler, and I will tell you that we do not. It takes a long time to melt the beeswax that way. And what would happen is we would have everything else ready to go, and then we're waiting and waiting and waiting on the beeswax. What I've found is the flash point for beeswax is over 400 degrees. It melts at 144. So the difference between the melting point and the flash point where it would start a fire is quite wide. And if you just make a promise to yourself that you're never going to walk away from your pot of beeswax that you're melting, the chances of it flashing is pretty slim. You should never be heating beeswax even close to that temperature. So that's why we use the Fry Daddy, where you can control the temperature of that. Moving on. These are the tools that we use, either a Fry Daddy, and if you don't have a Fry Daddy, an old, you want an old pot, you want a pot that you're only going to use for this, because you'll never quite get it clean enough to, use in your kitchen. I would recommend, a burner that you can put somewhere beside your kitchen. You can do it in your kitchen, but it's very messy, and you will be scraping spots of beeswax off your floor for weeks afterwards, probably. So I do it in a different space. I actually have a space set up in the back bedroom now that our kids are grown and gone, and I have those big office mats that you put down under your office chair over the carpet in that room, and that way if I spill, I can, just get it up easily. So you're going to need some measuring cups and spoons, a bowl scraper, and you're going to need one that's pretty rigid, not a flippy floppy one, stirring spoon, and if you're going to make a lot of lip balms, you're going to want to invest in one of the pouring trays. It holds 50, and they do make some that hold fewer than that. But it really is helpful if you can imagine pouring, 20 little teeny tubes and making sure they don't tip over and you don't spill over the edge and all of that. It's really much easier to use the pouring tray, and I'll show you some sources for where you can find those. And then of course you need your lip balm tubes. They do come in usually in white or black or sort of a clear. They call it natural, and they also come in a round shape. They come in an oval shape. And those two shapes hold the same amount. And then they also come in a slim stick that holds about half of what a regular lip balm tube holds. And they come in black and white. I have seen some colored tubes before, but most often they come in you can only buy them like in a set of 12, and they're all different colors. Well, if you're trying to make all of one flavor or something, that really doesn't help. So probably the best thing to do if you want to delineate flavors is to go with a black or white tube, and then just use the caps to show what the flavor is. So those, and the other two things that are there, if you don't have a pouring tray, you either need a pouring cup like that white cup over on the right with a real skinny pouring lip, or a syringe to put the stuff down in the tubes. The problem with the syringe is that that liquid that you're pouring is going to solidify pretty quickly, and it's going to be hard to clean out of that. So I just work with glass Pyrex measuring cups and use the pouring tray. So here are some resources if you want to grab a paper and pen, and as Louise said, that they're going to tape this and it'll be available later. I will also post this on our WordPress site, and you'll be able to look at it later. But cost-wise, we buy from Rustic Essentials. We were buying from EB Honey, and they quit carrying some of the colors, and I don't think they even carry tubes anymore. They got all these caps now, but no tubes. For us, that has been the cheapest, because when you buy large quantities, the price gets cheaper and cheaper. But some of the companies, you can't buy less than like 100 if you're buying just the lids and then different caps. So these look like 3 places that have pretty decent prices. Berlin Packaging was the cheapest, but they only have like 4 colors, including black and white, and then they have like a red or a green. So that's the other issue, where Rustic Essentials probably has 15 or 20 different colors of caps. Pouring trays, if you have an Amazon Prime membership and you can get free shipping, that's the cheapest place to get a pouring tray. eBay, there's a place on eBay that has free shipping. That would be the next, cheapest cost. And again, you have to kind of put it in the cart and check what the shipping is. Sometimes some of these companies have outrageous shipping. So those are a couple of resources for those. Ingredients wise, again, if you have an Amazon Prime account, order stuff on Amazon. Or wholesale supplies, if you order a certain amount, I think it's over $40, they have free shipping. And also Bulk Apothecary is another place that we buy from a lot. So that's another place to find ingredients.
Hey, Jeannie.
Yeah.
There's a question here about, wanted to know if you could put that FDA link in the chat, and then
sure.
Also wanted to know, can you get customer safety heat shrink wraps?
Absolutely. And you know, I didn't even think to look for that, but they do sell, I know they sell it at the SKS bottles. I bet Rustic Essentials has them too. You look for shrink wrap is what, or shrink tubes. And yes, that is available. The other thing that we have found, we got away from that just because it's pretty labor intensive. We are buying labels that have a safety seal on them. So the label is rectangular, but there's a little half circle that sticks up, and when you put the label on, it tapes the lid on so that it, people aren't coming in and opening them. So, but yes, those are available at most of the places that carry the tubes, also carry the shrink tubes also. And you want let me see if I can get to this in the chat. Hang on a minute. Well, I don't have chat on my screen. Is it, maybe, is it under participants?
It would be under more.
Under more, okay.
Yeah.
There's the chat. Okay, whoops, it keeps disappearing on me. Hang on. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, here, I'll put this up and you can start. Whoops, it's going crazy on me. Is that? Yeah. I'll put this up and you can. I'm using my mouse or my trackpad. Okay, here's chat. You can look at this while I'm putting it in here. Okay, fba.com/cosmetics. And then well, if I could spell, that would be good. Factoring practices. Okay. Now how do I? There we go. Okay. This is the recipe. Well, I'm just not having any luck at all here. Okay, let me get rid of this stuff on my screen so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay. I'm giving you the recipe this way because I want you to go look at ingredients and decide what you want in your lip balm. You can find a million recipes online, but it basically boils down to oils, butters, and beeswax. You can use things like almond oil, you can use coconut oil, you can use castor oil, and all of the oils have a different quality to them. So if you want something that's super moisturizing, look for that. Castor oil is one that will stay on the surface and it makes the lip balm shiny. So like for a lip gloss type of look. The butters, coconut oil can be used as a butter because it's solid and when it's cooler. But you can use cocoa butter, you can use mango butter, you can use avocado butter, all different kinds of things. And again, each one of those has a different, shea butter is another one, has different qualities to it. They also make them unrefined and refined. So if you want the smell or the taste, like cocoa butter, we use unrefined. And so the lip balm has a little bit of a cocoa butter smell, taste to it. Or you could buy it refined and then they take the flavoring out of it. It's just up to you about how natural you want it to be. And then of course the beeswax is the hardening part of what you're making. And then and I'm going to show you how to figure out how much to make, but my recommendation to use this recipe is to use the parts in teaspoons, because if you can't imagine how small of an amount you're actually going to make. So if 5 teaspoons of oil, 2 teaspoons of butter like shea butter or cocoa butter or whatever, 3 teaspoons of beeswax. And then for every 1/4 of a cup of product, you're going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of vitamin E. Vitamin E helps it have a longer shelf life, and it's also very good for your skin. And then to get a little honey in there, 1/8 of a teaspoon of honey, and 2 to 8 drops of essential oils, but you need to make sure the essential oils are for oral use or lip balm use, or flavor oils. The flavor oils would not necessarily be a natural thing, but they're food grade, and they do usually have a little sweetness to them. So that's another option. You can also add coloring if you want to. We don't, but you can do that. And there are natural ways to color with clays, with dried food grade, peppers, and I mean, you can buy this stuff dried already, pumpkin or cumin or whatever. But the thing about these last 3 ingredients is you don't want to add those until you've cooled down your mix, because those can be affected by the heat. So what you're going to do to go through the instructions is you're going to melt the first 3, and you're going to have to get it up between 140 to 160 because the beeswax has to melt. So if you're going to make it in a small amount, and I'll show you this in a minute, you probably would just want to use, if you're going to make 50, you need less than a cup of ingredients. So you might just want to use a 2-cup Pyrex glass measuring cup. And you could put it all in there and melt it either over a hot plate or in the microwave even. You just don't want to get it too hot. If you just heat it to the melting point. I'm going to show you how I do it on a larger scale, and I will be using a Fry Daddy, and I do have a couple of other things to show you. So we're going to melt the first 3 ingredients, and then we're going to cool it down to 120. And then add the honey, the vitamin E, and the flavorings. Now, the one thing about honey is that honey is water-based, not oil-based, and it does not want to stay mixed. So we're going to try something tonight that I've not yet tried, and that is to use an immersion blender to blend it. When you use an emulsifier, that's basically what it does, is it just spins it and it breaks it all down into smaller pieces so that it helps it stay blended. The problem with it is if you add something to a chemical emulsifier, then you've added chemicals into your lip balms. And since we're trying to use bee products, and because we're not putting water in this product, we don't have to put a germicide in it. It's really nicer if we can keep it natural. Burt's Bees went to the dark side, and their stuff is full of chemicals now. But and then my recommendation to you is then before you pour your lip balms, you put a little bit of the mix in a plastic spoon and put it in the freezer for 5 minutes and pull it out and check it. Put it on your lips and see if it's stiff enough. And if it's not, add a little more beeswax. If it's too stiff, then you add a little more oil, and you just kind of fine tune it for your liking. And when you're happy with the texture, you pour it into tubes. You have to leave the tubes sit for, I don't know, an hour or two. But you don't want to put the caps on them until they cool. Once they're cool, it's up to you if you want to trim them. And I'll show you what this looks like. But when you pour these using the pouring tray, there will be about 1/4 of an inch of lip balm sticking up above the tube. And for us, because we're selling them, we've decided that doesn't look very nice. And so I've got a couple ways I can show you that we trim it to make it look even and then put the cap on it. So we're going to move on here to showing you how to do this. And let's see, I got to, stop my screen sharing. Hang on a minute. Pause the share. Okay, now what do I what do I do here?
So to get a full screen, you'll need to stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Yep, and then that'll put you at full screen. And for folks, you have an option to see the grid, which everybody doesn't have a picture, or you could just have the speaker view.
Can you put that on my screen? Because I just have you. I just need to be able to adjust my screen so that you can see.
Yeah, we can see you. Up
Can
in
you?
the look in the right hand corner, right top corner, you'll see what looks like a grid.
Gallery view. Is
Yep.
that what I'm? Okay, there's
Yeah.
me.
So you want
Okay.
speaker view. There you go.
Now, okay. Hang on a minute. Okay. Nope, that's not what I want. Hang on. Okay. So I'm going to prop this down because I want you to be able to see some things here.
There's a
So
quick question. How do you deal with wax shrinkage?
it's not, because there's so many other things in here, that's not an issue. It's only when it's alone, like when you're doing a candle. If you mix other things with the wax when you're pouring candles, that can help eliminate some of the shrinkage and maybe even eliminate the cracking. But there's not enough of it compared to the other ingredients in this. The only thing that does happen when you pour the lip balms is there'll be a little teeny like hole in the middle where there's a let me show you. I don't know if you can see this or not, but can you see that there's a stick down
Mm-hmm.
inside the tube? And that's what holds I don't think it'll come up, but there's a little stick in the middle of the tube, and that kind of creates a void at the very top. So when you go to clean these, you can kind of fill in with the extra lip balms that are there. I'm just going to rotate my screen a minute and show you what I've used. So on the back of my table here, let me see if I can do this right. I have my my cocoa butter, coconut oil, vitamin E, my essential oils, beeswax is over on the other side. But I poured them already and measured them, so we don't have to take the time to do that. Now here is my beeswax, and it's not okay, fast enough. So I'm going to show you this. I have my beeswax in this. I put the lid on it after it's dry, or it's cooled off, and I just leave it here. So that is hopefully melting fast enough. Now, this is going to be interesting. So I am going, if you're going to make lip balm for 50, oh, you know what? Hang on a minute. We must have skipped over that screen. I need to go back a minute. Screen share. We missed that. I'm sorry. This is, okay, this doesn't want to go back. Here we go. I don't know how I got past this. This is how you figure out what you need to make. The lip balm tubes, the regular size ones, whether they're round or oval, hold 0.15 ounces. Now a tablespoon is 0.5 ounces, so this is like almost a little more than a fifth of a tablespoon. That's all that's in it. The slim tubes only hold 0.07. So if you're making, whoops, I keep touching the wrong thing. If you're making 10 tubes, that would be a total of 1.5 ounces. That's 3 tablespoons of finished product. So not very much. If you're making 25 tubes, you would be making 7.5 tablespoons of finished product. If you're making 50, which is what I would be pouring, that is 7.5 ounces. So it's a little bit less than a cup. And when I measure out my base recipe, I always make a little bit more than 8 ounces because there's always waste or there's stuff stuck to the container when you're done and so forth. But that's again only 15 tablespoons of product. So for 50 tubes you need a cup, and that's not very much when you start breaking out into the recipe. So well, I'm going the wrong way. So to start with, we're going to take that 5 parts oil. Now I got to stop sharing so I can show you what we're going to do here. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so I have my empty pot here, and I'm going to plug it in and hope that I don't blow a fuse. If I blow a fuse, we're in trouble. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Okay, so I have my, we're going to save that for later. Okay, I have my coconut oil here. And coconut oil, when you get it out of the container, it's usually solid. You know, it turns liquid at about 76 degrees. So some of this is solid and some of it is liquid. I may have to use the microwave to get all of this out of here. Yep, I'm going to. So that means these have to be shut down. So I can run. I even have a little microwave here. Can you see it?
Yep, we can see it.
My whole thing set up here. But I found out if I run the hot pot and the microwave at the same time, it blows a fuse. Now this is my cocoa butter. You know, the cocoa butter looks like this when you get it out of the bag. And I melted it so that I could measure it. So this is my butter that will harden, you know, when it's cool. And I melted that a little earlier today. So that's going in here. And this isn't our propolis that we add. See if my cocoa butter is, or my coconut oil is melted enough to get out of here. Yep, see, that didn't take very long. It's liquid. That goes in next. And now we can plug these in again.
Someone asked about propolis. Will it melt?
You can't put straight propolis in. You have to make propolis oil to put propolis in it. And you can figure out how to do that by going to our blog site, which I'll give you the address at the end. When you make propolis, I just dropped this in here. And of course, you know, I'm doing the bad thing. I forgot to put my gloves on, folks. In order to make propolis oil, you measure it by weight to decide. I just lost my stirrer in here. I need to get some paper towel out. And you use a little heat, but you use an oil that has a long shelf life, olive oil, you know, other things, and you heat the oil up and put the propolis, the broken up pieces in the propolis oil. We usually put it in a mesh bag, like a little foil bag or something, so you don't have to strain it at the end. And then you heat it. You heat it up for 20 minutes, and then you have propolis oil. Okay, now the next thing. So I need. So on this section, if you're doing, you know, like a cup of beeswax, you're doing, you know, 3 parts, I think is what the recipe says. And I need, for this big batch that I'm making, I need 3.5 cups. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to tip this up so you can see better. I always strain this one more time with my candle. This is a candle pouring pot. So I'm going to put my beeswax through this cut and knit on the top of this pot, just to make sure that I've got all the messy stuff out of it. You know, you don't want little specks of black or propolis or whatever in your lip balms. So I pour it through this and I let it strain. I really need a piece of, there we go. And then sometimes you have to help it. Can you all see this well enough? Yeah.
Yes.
I can't figure out how to get myself in it.
Now that cotton knit, is that like a
An
cotton
old
t-shirt?
it's t-shirt. Yep. Okay. So then I just flip it back like that and pin it. Now I'm going to measure it into here. There's 1, 2. I don't think I have quite enough. Oh, maybe 3, but I think I have to check my recipe here. Oh, I want to show you this too. 2/3, so I need a little bit more. I want to show you what this looks like too. I'm going to pick this up. This is what happens when you pour beeswax into something that's not hot enough. Can you see that? But the oils that you're using, you're going to have to bring up beyond their melting point so that they're hot enough for the beeswax to stay melted. Okay, so I need a little bit more beeswax. And of course, this has started to solidify, so you kind of have to scrape the beeswax off the bottom here. Well, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Okay. Oops. Okay, now I'm going to pin this back so that I can pour it. 2/3. Okay. Now I am going to turn my beeswax off. Oops. And turn this up. And while that's melting, I'm going to show you what the other thing. If you are going to sell lip balms, you really should do this. The chances of you ever getting caught are pretty slim, but what you are supposed to do, and you will read this in the good manufacturing process, is you're supposed to write down on your recipe every ingredient, the company that made it, and the lot number. So on our bottle, so let's say I have this vitamin E. There's a little teeny, where did I find this? Some of them are hard to find. There's a little teeny number right here that's stamped into the label that you can hardly read. Some of them will say best used by, like this one has a lot number on the front on this label right here. And you're supposed to write the lot number down, and that's because if somebody should ever come back and say your product made me sick or whatever, you can trace back what you actually used in here, and the fact that you okayed it, it looked okay, it wasn't, dirty, it wasn't spoiled or whatever. You're supposed to keep records like this. Now, whether they ever come ask after you and look for them is very unlikely, but it's just good to have them if you're indeed going to sell things. Okay, so that now in this pot, I need to stir this until the beeswax is melted and part of the rest of the oils in here. If I was doing a small batch, I would do it in this. Let me change I would do it, this is a 2-cup measure. If you're making 50 lip balms, what you need to make, it would be about half of this. And this, then you can actually just heat right in the microwave. Okay, now this is almost melted. Just that little bit of time, which is why I love the Fry Daddy, because, if I was doing this in a crock pot, it would take 40 minutes for this to heat up enough. So
Jeannie, we had
yeah.
someone ask a question. What do you do if you make your own ingredients like olive oil infused with calendula flowers that you grow and
Absolutely.
infuse?
Yeah, and so just use that as in place of your oil. We do that with a lot of our creams. Not with our lip balm so much, just because we're not sure what the flavor would be. But yeah, if you make calendula oil or something, just use that as your oil. Just make sure it's strained so that it doesn't have little pieces in it. Okay, so I'm gonna, well, I see I shouldn't have done that because now I need to pick up my computer. Okay, here's my oil. It is completely liquefied. So I have turned my my pot down now, so that it was probably about 145 degrees, and I don't want it to be quite that hot. Another thing that will be very helpful is a candy thermometer. And so I can look at the temperature to make sure that it's come down enough. So while I am doing that, or while it's cooling off, this is what, let me move some of this stuff out of my way. I actually brought in a bucket down here at my feet to put my dirty dishes in, so I'll just do that. There's just a little bit more in there. Okay, I'm going to show you the tray. The other thing you have got, I don't think I put this on my list of things you need. Paper towels. You cannot live without paper towels. So this is the pouring tray. Some of them are different colors, but the lip balm tubes snap into the bottom, so they fit in here, and then you snap them in. And what happens then is when you pour this, there's a lip around it so that the wax or the lip balm stuff doesn't overflow all over the table. And then when you're finished, what usually happens to me is I get all but about 4 or 5 of them filled, and I run out of product. That's because it's all over the top here. So then once it's dry enough, and it just takes a couple minutes, you can take your spatula or something flat, like, where's my spatula? Can't see it. Yes. And some of these come with a spatula. It kind of looks like a drywall knife, spackling knife. But I have a little flat spatula, and you can just scrape the extra stuff off the top, and then put it back in your glass container and melt it again, and then use that to fill up the last few. So let's see what the temp is here. We're down to 140. I probably need to stir. Questions? Does anybody want me to go back to the recipe to see? Or questions while we're holding off here a minute? Now, what I'm going to do once this has all the other ingredients in it, I'm going to pull out a cup of this and flavor it. And then I will use that 1 cup to make 1 set of lip balms. If you are making 50 and you want, 10 of them to be one flavor and 10 of them to be another and 10 of them to be another, you can do that too. You just have to split your batch out into smaller amounts and then use less flavoring for each of those. All right, I'm gonna move on here. Okay, so I have my honey, which is not going to want to come out. I've had my my best trick for decrystallizing honey is to use an electric heating pad, wrap the honey in a paper towel, and so I've had the honey laying on my bed with the heating pad wrapped around it so that I could decrystallize it enough. It takes about, I don't know, 12 hours or so. So that's the honey, and this, nope, that's the flavoring. This is the vitamin E. Yep. Okay, so these go in before you split your batch to flavor it. So what I've done is made a batch that will make about, let's see, 7, it makes about 500 lip balms. And I just take it, I just let it solidify right here in this pot. And when we run low on a flavor, I come in here and I dig out with a spoon the solidified lip balm base, and I put it in this, and I melt it in the microwave, and then I add my flavoring. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I need to find, here we go. Okay, so here is my container, and this had some kind of oil in it. I'm just going to, and I really should put my gloves on. I didn't do anything with these, so I'm just going to put them back on. This is the hardest thing to remember. I put them on and then I wanted to touch the computer, so I had to take them off again. So, I hope this makes sense, folks. This is okay. So I am going to, and like I said, I usually make a little more than 8 ounces for 50. I'd rather, and really, you know, I'd rather have too little than too much, because then I've got it all figured out and I've got everything ready for different flavors. Okay, so that is 8 ounces, and I just dumped, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I just dumped my flavorings out all over the table. So I guess I will be re-pouring this. Okay, so I'm gonna make apple cinnamon. So I need, okay. My recipe calls for a scant 3/4. And, you know, this is one of those things where you got to taste it to kind of do the quality test. So I'm adding an apple and a caramel flavoring, and these come from Wholesale Supply. They're called Crafter's Choice. And they have essential oils, and they have flavoring oils, and they have fragrant oils. And the other thing I'm putting in is cinnamon. And you don't want cinnamon too strong because it's sort of caustic. I'm adding 18 drops. 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Now, I'm going to stir this, and then I'm going to taste it by dropping a bit on my arm. It looks like I'm going to have to nuke this a little bit before I pour it. See how it's starting to solidify already? But I'm going to put a little bit on my arm, and then I'm going to taste it.
Michelle wants to know if the flavoring is specific to lip balm, or can you use candy flavorings?
You can use candy flavorings. We have used some of the Loran flavorings, but I like the Wholesale Supply Crafter's Choice better. A couple of the Lorans I had bought, I think it was like a cotton candy, and I had to use so much. I just felt like it wasn't. The other thing, that a flavor that's hard to get right is honey flavoring, because when you put honey in this, it really doesn't do much. And and I'm gonna whip this too. And it's the artificial honey flavorings are kind of weird. Let's see if I'm going to open this microwave. I gotta have clean. Okay. That's the other hard part, is you gotta keep putting gloves on and off. Not quite here. And you don't want to heat this too much. I'd rather heat it less and then stir the lumpy stuff until it melts, and then you're not overheating it. All right, now as I said, the honey doesn't want to, this is going to be a new experiment here, folks, because this is recommended, but I've never done it before. So I just hope I can do it without making a mess. But this is supposed to help the honey stay emulsified. what happens is you pour this and you get down to the bottom of the container and it's all honey at the bottom. So that's what we're trying to prevent. Okay, here's my tray now. And you can start at one end and just start pouring. And can you see that it's kind of overflowing onto the tray? The nice thing about this is that you don't have to be so careful. I just, trying to pour these little teeny tiny tubes and make them stand up and not tip over and not make a mess is really difficult. So it's just easier to do this tray and you can let it overflow and it's not a big deal. Now you can see I'm getting down to the bottom and I don't see a bunch of honey laying down there. That's a good thing. Awesome. Well, I would say that was successful. Okay. Every now and then I just noticed there was a little speck that came out. It's probably every now and then you'll see that at the bottom. So now I've got all this left over here and I've got about 10 or 12 that I didn't have enough to fill. So
Russ asks if can you warm up the tray to help the overflow go into like other tubes?
You can tip the tray a little bit, but I don't know that warming it would help. One of the things is I clean with a heat gun, and you have to be careful with the heat gun on this plastic. There's a couple of times where I've started sort of melting the tray itself and had to kind of manhandle the tubes to get them in because I've kind of misshapen the holes. But that was quite a bit that I scraped off of there, and then I can pour more. And like I said, you kind of have to watch this and make sure you're not overheating it.
Michelle wanted to know if the honey separates once it's poured into the tube.
No. Once it starts, see, it's probably almost solidified now. If I show you the top here, these are dry on the.
Yeah, we can't see them.
Hang on, there they are.
Yeah.
I'm not holding my screen right. Can you see them? Yeah.
Yep.
They're almost dry now. Now they won't be dry down inside. Definitely don't want this boiling. Okay, so now I can pour more.
Michelle mentioned maybe putting 2 or 3 layers of gloves on at once.
Well, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, then you just pull one off and yep. Yeah, now see, I'm probably not going to make it. I'm probably about 4 short, and that's okay. I'd rather have not quite as many than have extra and have to dump it or what. I just hate, I hate wasting it. So, but I'll do it one more time. I'll scrape off when this cools a bit, and then we'll talk about how to clean them up. Come on. Okay, so I have turned this off. So that's in the big Fry Daddy. This is my master batch that I will leave on my table here, and then when we need more of a certain flavor, and then by that time it'll be solidified, and I'll just scoop it out with a big spoon, put it in here, and melt it in the microwave, and add my flavorings and pour another batch. So let me see if I can get this off of here. I'm not sure I really have enough I might have enough for one more. Maybe. So, you don't realize how much when you're only working with 1.15 of an ounce. There's probably that much stuck to the container. And then I'm going to show you how to clean them up. Okay, I'm going to melt one more time and see if I can one more. Nothing goes to waste. Yeah, see, I have two right here that are almost full, so maybe I can get those filled. I don't know. Ooh. All right, that one is almost full. Now I'm going to show you what this is going to look like. You see how when you take it out, I'm not sure where the camera is,
You got
how
it.
it has a little bit of goo at the top. So there's two ways to take care of that. One way is to take a sharp knife that has no serrated edge and cut this off so that it's smooth, and then you can kind of wipe it. Now I'm gonna save that. Now see, I would wait an hour to do this, but I'm doing this so you can see. I'm gonna save that right here on my paper towel because I have one lip balm here in the tray that needs about 1/4 of an inch more stuff, and I can actually rescue that and fill that one. The other way, and I'll tell you, I have stopped doing it with the knife, and I have started doing it this way. I take it out and I just wipe it on the paper towel and then kind of roll the edges, and then it's flat. Now some of these, I'm going to find one that has a hole in the middle. Here's one. You see the hole in the middle of that? And that's from that stick that goes through the middle. So if I wipe it and then kind of push down on a pile of the leftovers here, it'll fill that hole in. And then it looks good. So these need to, I think I'll put these back in here just so they don't, once these are cool, then you can put the caps on and, you know, put labels and such on them. Now, depending on how big of a production you have, I honestly don't know whether this company will work for you, but we use a company right in Lancaster where our business partners live called Blue Label Digital. And for the, you know, we buy probably rolls of 500 labels at a time. But for what we need, they have been the cheapest place in town and around. I mean, we've looked online, we've looked at everything. Blue Label Digital. Okay, so let me clean up some of my mess here. And I'm going to show you how to do some cleanup. Because as you know, working with beeswax is very messy. Okay, so I have this immersion blender that's all full of product, and I have a measuring cup that's full of beeswax, and I have a spoon that's full of beeswax. You do not want this stuff down your kitchen sink. So this is what we do. We take the heat gun, which I have here on the floor. You got to be careful with this because it does get hot. I burned myself this afternoon bumping it with my arm. But what I do to clean my tools is to heat them up with the heat gun, which is not plugged in. So, you know, if you heat them up and then wipe them real quick, you get most of that cream and most of the beeswax off of the tools. So like this one, you know, I wouldn't want to put this in the kitchen sink. So just heat it up and melt the beeswax off of it. And I could actually do this over my pot, which would probably be smarter. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, you get the idea. Now I'm working on a really nice old oak table that I have put a like an oilcloth tablecloth on, and then it's white, that white laminate that you can buy a 4x8 sheet at the hardware store, and they'll even cut it for you. And I just had it cut to fit my table. I used to have a nice piece of plexiglass that I worked on top of, but it started to crack and kind of disintegrated. But even like to clean up my surface here, I can just melt that with the heating gun and wipe it up. And just, you know, get it to the melting stage and just wipe it, and then you got your stuff cleaned up. Now let me go right back to
Jeannie, we had a question about the storage temperature in case you wanted to sell at street fairs.
Well, remember that it has beeswax in it, which doesn't melt until 144. These really don't even melt in a hot car. So the storage temperature, it really isn't an issue. Let me go right back here to just talk a little bit about cleanup. Now we gotta go. How do we get back here? Okay, what did I do? Okay, we did that. Okay, why is it not advancing? Do I need to click on it? There we go. So I showed you how to, oh, I forgot one last thing. These lip balm tubes are going to be gooey. There's just no way to get around it. They're going to have product on them. So what the best thing to do is to use rubbing alcohol and squirt it on some paper towel and wipe them off. And I can show you that in just a second. So again, with your tools in your workspace, clean up with your heat gun, and then take your equipment into the kitchen and wash it in the kitchen sink. So that is really it. Let me come back and I'll show you the alcohol cleanup. Stop sharing. I'm learning. So I actually could not find my alcohol, and we had this real liquidy hand sanitizer that works just as well. So once you get the caps on these, and I'll put a cap on this one.
Michelle wanted to know what the covering was that you got at the hardware store.
It's white laminate. So okay, I'm gonna put my lid on this, and then just take your rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer, and wipe them off real good. And now they're not sticky and slimy and greasy, and your label will then stick, which is important. No, it's here. I'll hold this up and show you. It's this real thin. It's masonite with the white kind of plasticky finish on it. It's white laminate. I think if you go and ask about white laminate, they'll know what you want. It's kind of like tile board almost. It's a lot cheaper than plexiglass. I mean, I think a whole sheet of it's like 15 bucks at the most. So any other questions that I can answer for you now that I have a big mess? I hope that made sense. It's just a little interesting to do it like this. Yeah, somebody said it's like a dry erase board. That's exactly what it is. That's what I used to make my dry erase boards in my classroom out of. So, yep. It's just that, you know, it makes it cleanable. You can't, you know, a plastic tablecloth works, but you can't use a heat gun on a plastic tablecloth. It will shrivel up to nothing. Immediately, it'll melt. So that doesn't work very well if you want to be able to clean up. So, anybody else? Nope.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Well, very good.
Well, I hope it made sense and you learned what you wanted to learn. It's not hard to do. And like I said, you know, you can, some of these, that wholesale supply place, oh my gosh, they have a million different flavors. You know, they have mixes that they've already done for you, you know, and all different kinds of oils and butters. And if you read about them, and you can kind of pick and kind of make your recipe special or whatever, to do what you want it to do. So
Well,
Anything
thank
else?
you so much. You mentioned about putting up your blog page.
Yes. Let me come back here. How about if I write it in the chat? That's easier. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Well, want to come up? Oh, there it is. So it was already up. Okay. So if you go to beapothecary.wordpress.com, right. A terrible typist. Okay. So beapothecary.wordpress.com, it's a blog site. It's separate from our store site. And if you go to the top right corner in the brown menu strip and go to presentations, I'll post this tonight when we're finished. And just you can scroll through the presentations and find what you're looking for. And if you go to the propolis presentation, you can find out how to collect it and clean it and then make oil or tincture. Tincture is alcohol. And what do we sell ours for? We sell ours for $3.95, and I'm going to tell you, they really are pretty much a loss leader for what you have in it and the labor that, they're pretty labor intensive. And it's really hard to charge more than that because of, the market that's out there, the mass production of Chapstick and Burt's Bees and all of that kind of stuff. But, you figure that the tube itself, by the time you have a tube and a lid, you may have 30 cents in your lip tube, and then the ingredients. But the labor is really the biggest issue because it does take time. You've got to make the batch, you've got to pour it, you've got to load your tray. You've got to then pour it, and then you've got to wait for it to cool, and then you have to clean them all. Well, you have to clean the tops off of them all, put the caps on, then you have to clean them all with alcohol. So I put them all in a baggie when they're greasy with the caps, and then I take them out to the couch while I'm watching TV. I clean them with alcohol, and then they have to go in a clean baggie to do that. And then once they're clean, then you have to label them. And then if you're putting shrink wrap on them, you have to put shrink wrap on them. So there's a lot of labor time in lip balms. They're not something easy to make, really, as far as the time and the labor that goes into them. And as far as ingredients, I wait a minute. Let me see if I have it written down here about the cost of ingredients. Sometimes I put that on my sheet. I don't. But there's probably, another 50 cents at least in ingredients, and then your time. And you have to figure your time into your cost. But what we've decided, is that we make money on our other products. This is something that maybe draws people in at a festival. It's something not too expensive, for kids to have or whatever. You just have to see if it's worth your time, really. So. Yeah, and like you said, somebody said the equipment is an investment as well. So, it's fun to make for yourself, for your family, stocking stuffers, things like that. Sometimes it's not quite as fun when you decide to sell and then you have a demand and then you have to do it when you don't really feel like it. So you have to decide, sometimes things we like to do for so for fun aren't so fun when you're talking about mass producing or producing on demand, things like that. So
Do you recommend buying the pots new, or could you get them, say, like a Goodwill
like
used?
to cook in, oh, absolutely, Goodwill. That everything we do with beeswax and creams and stuff is in something. I mean, we bought the Fry Daddies new because that was something we really needed. But if you're just going to use a pot, I mean, but everybody's got a glass Pyrex. I mean, if you're going to do small batches, that's all you need, and one of the trays, and they're between $12 and $15. Well, 10 if you got Amazon Prime. But So that's not much, and you can use your, I mean, we have bought cup measures and spoon measures just for this process. But if you get the beeswax off with the heat gun and wash them really good in a good dish soap, you can get them clean enough to use. I mean, and all this is all food grade ingredients anyway. Beeswax is actually considered a food, and it is used to make medicine. They coat capsules with it and things like that. So it's not like if you use a measuring cup or a spoon again for food, it's going to hurt anything. It's just a matter of getting it clean. So, anything else?
Yeah, and folks, I had listed it earlier, but that's a Presto big kettle multi-cooker and steamer. I know that Walmart carries it.
Yes, and it's a Presto. You just want to make sure you've got one that's got the thermostat on it.
Yeah.
And if you want to be right below warm, because 200 is hotter than beeswax melts. Beeswax melts at about 145. So it doesn't need to come up very high. And as I said, I leave my spoon stuck in here probably, but I leave my beeswax in my big pot, and it's solidified in there, and I just put the lid on it, and when I go get ready to make something again, then I just heat it up. So.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to wrap up. It's 7 minutes after 8.
Mm-hmm.
Any final questions real quick? All right.
Well, I hope it worked out okay. It's hard to work the screen so everybody can see. I played around all day trying to figure out where to put the computer screen so that.
Well, look pretty good, Jeannie. You did a great job. Thank you so much.
Well, you can't see the rest. You can't see the rest of my room. That's a good thing. It's a mess.
No problem. No problem. All right, folks. Thank you for attending, and it was fun. Thank you again, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Everybody have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.